I'm Esther. I'm in my 30s. I run my own logistics firm, and I was sitting at my kitchen counter, just adding the final name to my wedding guest list. My phone lit up. A text from my mom, Judy. I read it once. Twice. Your sister's wedding is the family's priority. We can't make it to yours. No apology. No, I'm so sorry. Just a statement. The words sat there, cold and final. It felt like someone quietly locking a door from the other side. A simple text message, confirming what I'd always known about my place in the family. My fingers didn't shake. I didn't cry. I just typed back 2 words. That's fine. Then I closed the laptop. They had no idea what I was capable of. A week later, while they were all in Boston for my sister Chloe's priority wedding, the internet discovered something they never bothered to ask about. My ceremony. The one that was already happening, under the olive trees of my own $6 million villa in Tuscany. Have you ever been the one who's always expected to bend, just so everyone else can stay comfortable? Before I tell you how it all unfolded, make sure you're subscribed. When people ask what growing up in our house was like, I never know where to start. From the outside, we looked picture perfect. I'm sure of it. We were the family on the Christmas cards, the ones with the matching sweaters and the wide, bright smiles, posed in front of a fireplace. We looked close. We looked happy. But a photograph only captures 1 second. It doesn't show you what happens before or after. If you looked long enough, if you watched us at a holiday dinner or a school event, you'd see the pattern. Every story, every celebration, every bit of energy in a room. It all looped back to my younger sister, Chloe. She was the family's orbit. I was the quiet background, the one keeping the whole system balanced. I used to think it was normal, the way Mom's eyes would light up, really light up, every time Chloe walked into a room. Dad would clear his throat at dinner parties, his voice booming with pride, ready to tell everyone about Chloe's latest dance trophy. Again. When I brought home a science fair ribbon, first place, or a report card with straight A's, they'd nod. A polite, distracted nod. That's nice, honey. Then the subject would change, back to Chloe. I remember Mom saying it to me once, after I'd won a state-level debate. She was watching Chloe practice a cheer routine in the yard, her face soft. She didn't even turn to look at me. You're lucky, Esther, she said, almost to herself. Things just come easier for your sister. That word, lucky. It stung. It made every late night I'd spent studying, every hour I'd poured into my work, feel invisible. Chloe's easy was celebrated. My hard was just expected. There's a photo album, a big one with a faded burgundy cover, in my parents' living room. It tells the whole story better than I ever could. You can flip through page after page. Chloe blowing out birthday candles. Chloe in a pink tutu. Chloe at prom, a dozen roses in her arms. Chloe, Chloe, Chloe. I appear, maybe twice, cropped at the edge of a frame, or half turned away, a blur in the background of her moment. When I was 16, I was flipping through it alone. I found a photo from a family vacation, one I remembered vividly. We were standing on a pier, the wind blowing. I remembered standing right beside her, our arms linked, both of us laughing. But in the printed version, I was gone. My face, my shoulder, my entire half of the photo literally trimmed out of the frame. Cut away with a pair of scissors, leaving a neat, sharp edge. When I asked Mom about it, she just waved her hand, as if it were nothing. Oh, that. It was to make the composition neater. Neater. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just closed the album and put it back on the shelf, and in that moment, something in me just stopped. I stopped expecting to be in the picture at all. Grandma Helen was the only one who noticed. I'd feel her watching me during those loud, chaotic family dinners. Chloe would be at the head of the table, even as a teenager, holding court, telling some dramatic story about a minor high school inconvenience. Mom and Dad would be hanging on her every word. Grandma Helen would just be sitting there, stirring her coffee, her gaze drifting from Chloe to my parents, and then, finally, to me. She'd catch my eye and just hold it. Later, when I was helping clear the dishes, she'd put her hand on my arm. Her skin was soft, like old paper, and she always smelled faintly of rosewater and a little bit of pepper. Don't you worry, sweetheart. she'd whisper, leaning in close so only I could hear. Some people only see what's shiny. She had a way of saying things that made you feel seen, really seen, without ever needing to explain yourself. My cousin Rachel too. She was on the outside, same as me, just in a different way. She was the one who, on my 19th birthday, called me at midnight. My parents had forgotten, not just the date, but the entire day. They were too wrapped up in helping Chloe pack for a weekend trip with her friends. Rachel called me, singing happy birthday badly into the phone, and I just stood in my dark dorm room, crying silently. She'd mailed a card with $20 tucked inside, a fortune for a fellow college student. It wasn't a party. It wasn't a big gift. It was just remembering. But favoritism like this, it doesn't usually explode. It seeps. It seeps in slowly, like a stain, until the silence feels safer than the confrontation. How do you argue against a photo that's been cut? How do you prove that an I forgot wasn't an accident, but a symptom? You can't, so you get quiet. By the time we were adults, the pattern hadn't just continued, it had set. It had become the unspoken language of our family. When I graduated from college with honors, I had 2 tickets for my parents. Chloe, who was living in the same city, was supposed to drive them. I waited. The ceremony started. I walked across the stage, found my seat, and stared at the 2 empty chairs next to Rachel. Chloe never showed up. She hadn't just forgotten. She'd decided to go to a music festival instead. When I called Mom later that night, holding back tears, her voice was just tired. "Oh, Esther," she sighed. "You know, Chloe. It was just a simple misunderstanding. Don't be so dramatic. A simple misunderstanding. My entire college career, reduced to an administrative error. It only got worse. A few years later, Chloe borrowed $5,000 from me. It was for a business idea, something vague about artisanal dog treats. I was building my actual company from scratch, and that money was a significant hit, but she swore she'd pay me back. 6 months later, she posted photos of a trip to Bali. When I confronted my father, he just shook his head, like I was the one causing a problem. "She's still finding her way, Izzy," he said, using my old childhood nickname, a tool to make me feel small. Be patient. Patient. Lucky. Understanding. They weren't just words. They were job descriptions. They were the bars of a cage I hadn't even realized I was in. So, when Mom's text came through, the one that started this all, I wasn't really shocked. It just confirmed everything. I had spent my entire life being the adjustable one, the one who bent so others could stay comfortable, the one who was lucky, patient, and understanding, the one who got trimmed out of the photo to make the composition neater. That night, I just sat in my apartment. The silence was heavy. I looked at the soft hum of the city lights through my window, the scent of a cedar candle I'd lit to calm myself. My wedding invitations were still stacked neatly on the kitchen counter. They were beautiful, thick, cream-colored cardstock, sealed with a custom gold wax stamp I'd designed myself. I'd spent hours handwriting the addresses in calligraphy. I had pictured my parents getting theirs, Mom calling me, excited, Dad saying he was proud. I'd imagined it sitting proudly on their fridge. Now, I just pictured it unopened, tossed aside on a mail table, buried under flyers for Chloe's glossy, high-priority event. And yet, underneath the familiar, dull ache, there was something else. A strange, cold calm. A quiet realization that this was it. This was my chance to stop begging for a seat at their table. 2 days after that message, Chloe called. Not Mom, not Dad, Chloe. She called like nothing had even happened. Her voice was bright, sugary, the kind she always used when she wanted something, or when she was blissfully unaware of the wreckage she'd just caused. "Esther, can you believe it?" she said, giggling. I said nothing. "The venue we wanted, the really exclusive one, it opened up last minute. It's the same weekend as yours. But that's fine, right? You're on the West Coast, we're in Boston. It's perfect. It's destiny." Destiny. She actually said that word, like she had just quoted a Hallmark card, not like she had just taken a bulldozer to my wedding plans. For a few seconds, I couldn't even speak. I just listened to the faint clinking of her bracelets through the phone. She was probably walking around, admiring her ring, admiring herself in a mirror. And then I realized, she was waiting for me to congratulate her. My throat felt tight. "That's great, Chloe," I said, and I was terrified at how even my voice sounded. How steady, really, perfect timing. She giggled again, a sound that used to make me just feel invisible, but now made me feel cold. "I knew you'd understand," she chirped. "You've always been so reasonable." Reasonable. That was it. That was the word. The final nail. That was my assigned role in our family script. Steady, mature, predictable. The one they could lean on, the one they could disappoint, the one who would just absorb the blow, while they indulged her every single impulse. The call ended. I don't remember what else we said. I stood there, phone in hand, looking at that stack of invitations. For my entire life I had bent. But that night, as I stared at Mom's message and listened to the echo of Chloe's voice in my head, something shifted. For once I didn't bend. The next evening, my phone rang. Mom. Of course, Chloe was the scout, Mom was the cavalry, sent in to manage the reasonable one. I let it ring 3 times, just staring at her picture on the screen, a photo of her and Dad, smiling. On a vacation I wasn't invited to. I picked it up. "Hi, Mom." "Sweetheart," she began. I knew that tone. It was her careful step tone, the one she used when she was about to disappoint me but didn't want to feel guilty about it. It was the tone she used to deliver bad news, and make it sound like it was my fault for being upset by it. "Sweetheart," she said again, "about the wedding dates. I know Chloe mentioned it." "She did," I said. My voice was flat, a piece of glass. "Well, honey, Chloe's fiancé's family. They can only do that weekend. It's the only time they can all get off work. She's very emotional right now, you know how she gets, and, well, it would just mean so much to everyone if you could be flexible." Flexible. There it was. The partner word to reasonable. Flexible. The one who bends, the one who moves, the one who reschedules her life, her commitments, her marriage, so that someone else's party can go off without a hitch. When she said flexible, what I heard was less important. I took a slow breath. The old me, the Esther from a week ago, would have sighed and said, "Okay, Mom, let me see what I can do." The new me, the one forged in the silence after Chloe's destiny comment, held the line. "So, let me make sure I understand," I said, my voice still quiet, still even. "You want me to move my wedding?" There was a pause, a tiny, crackling silence on the line. She hadn't expected that. She'd expected me to just understand, to just fold. I had forced her to hear the words, to actually say what they were asking. Mom hesitated. She cleared her throat. "Esther, don't be difficult. We just think it would be easier. For everyone." "Easier for everyone," I repeated. "Or just easier for Chloe?" That's when her voice changed. The careful, sweetheart tone evaporated. Now it was just irritation. I was no longer being reasonable. "You're so independent, Esther," she said, and it wasn't a compliment, it was an accusation. "You've always been. You're established, your fiancé is wonderful, you have this whole life. You'll understand." The irony almost made me laugh. It was a bitter, sharp taste in the back of my throat. My independence. The very thing they had forced me to develop, because they were never there. The strength I had to build, brick by painful brick, because they were always, always, looking the other way. Now it was being used as the very reason to abandon me. They had taught me to survive on my own, and now they were punishing me for it. "Mom," I said, and my voice was shaking now, just barely. You promised you'd be there." She sighed. A long, weary sigh. The sigh of a martyr, put upon by a difficult child. "Esther, it's not about choosing sides, it's not personal, it's just logistics." Logistics. My hand tightened on the phone so hard I thought the plastic might crack. That word. She used that word. Logistics is my entire life. It's my career. It's the company I built from nothing, while Chloe was finding herself on my dime. Logistics, to me, means precision. It means integrity. It means fairness. It means every single piece matters. And you don't just lose one because it's inconvenient. In her mouth, the word logistics was just another excuse. It was the final betrayal. I was just a logistical problem, an inconvenient date on a calendar that needed to be moved. I was the package that could be rerouted, no questions asked. I have to go, I said. Esther, wait. I didn't wait. I hung up. That night, I called my father. After hanging up on Mom, I just sat there, my mind completely blank. The anger had passed, leaving behind a cold, empty space. I told myself Mom was just Mom. She was emotional. Dad was practical. He was the calm one. He might not be warm, but he was fair. I just needed one person, one single person from that house, to see me. He picked up on the second ring, his voice, his usual, level tone. Esther. Not Izzy, not yet. That was reserved for when he needed something. Hi, Dad, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted. I just spoke to Mom. Ah, he said. He knew. Of course he knew. Dad, they can't seriously be asking me to move my wedding, can they? I heard him sigh. It was the same sound Mom made. The sound of being inconvenienced. Izzy, he said. There it was. Izzy, you know how your sister gets. She's delicate. If we don't go to hers, if we don't make it the priority, she'll take it personally. She'll spiral. You know that. I waited. I was waiting for the but. But you're my daughter too. But we'll figure it out. But you matter. It never came. Instead, he said the one thing that broke me. You've always been the strong one, Esther. You can handle this. The strong one. The final, locking piece of the cage. I was reasonable. I was flexible. I was independent. And I was strong. All of them just different words for alone. All of them just excuses to leave me by myself, to manage my own pain, so they could rush off to manage Chloe's feelings. My blood went cold. I bit the inside of my cheek, hard. I tasted the metallic tang. So, let me get this straight, I whispered, my voice shaking with a rage so cold it burned. It's my job to understand. Again. It's my job to be the strong one, so you can all go and be the weak ones. He didn't answer. There was just silence on the line. Not an awkward silence. Not a thinking silence. It was the empty, hollow silence of agreement. The silence of a man who had already made his choice and was just waiting for me to be reasonable enough to accept it. That silence was his answer. It was the only answer I ever really got. I hung up. I didn't slam the phone. I didn't say goodbye. I just pressed the red button and cut the connection. For a long time, I just sat in the dark. The only sound in my apartment was the low, electric hum of the refrigerator, the clock on the microwave, ticking, ticking, ticking past midnight. My engagement ring caught the faint light from the street, scattering little reflections across the wall. Like fragments. Fragments of something I'd been trying to hold together for far too long. And that's when it clicked. The heat rose in my chest, a prickle behind my eyes, my jaw locking until it ached. I realized my family wasn't cruel in loud, obvious ways. Their weapon wasn't the knife, it was the omission. It was the leaving me out of pictures. The forgetting my birthdays. The logistics that just happened to erase me. The silence on the other end of the phone. I'd been trained my whole life to interpret that silence, that absence, as love, as peace. I was the one who was trimmed from the photo to make the composition neater. Not this time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. My hands were perfectly steady. I walked over to my desk, opened my laptop. The sudden blue-white light of the screen lit up my face in the dark room. My fingers flew across the keypad. I didn't go to my email. I didn't go to my wedding spreadsheet. I opened my travel bookmarks. And I clicked on a listing I had saved months ago, in a folder just labeled, Someday. A stone villa in Tuscany, surrounded by olive groves. The photos glowed like a dream. Gold light on terracotta walls. Someday had just arrived. This time, I would build my own frame. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The rage from the night before hadn't dissipated. It had cooled. It had settled into something solid and sharp in my chest. Purpose. I sat at my laptop. My hands didn't shake. My jaw was set. I didn't write a long, angry email. I didn't send a group text detailing their years of betrayal. I didn't make a single dramatic announcement. My fingers moved with the same precision I used to run my company. Click. Book flight. One way. Florence. Click. Confirm. My phone chimed with the e-ticket. This wasn't an explosion. It was a demolition. A quiet, controlled leveling of the person I used to be. No drama, no goodbye, no family group chat. Just a single decision, made in the silence they had always forced upon me. This time, I was using that silence as a shield. And a weapon. When the plane descended over the hills of Tuscany, the light was different. It was softer, warmer, almost forgiving. I rented a small car and drove through winding roads lined with cypress trees that looked like they'd been standing there for 1,000 years. I reached the villa. It was older than I'd imagined. And more beautiful. Stone walls the color of honey, deep-set windows, wooden shutters cracked with age. Olive trees stretched in silver-green waves, all the way to the horizon. The caretaker, an older man with hands like carved wood, named Signor Rossi, was waiting. He didn't say much, just handed me a heavy, ornate ring of iron keys. He looked at me, then at the sprawling, quiet house, and said in careful, accented English, "This place. She waits for someone who sees her." I closed my hand around the cool metal of the keys. "I see her," I said. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt seen. Inside, the air was cool and still. It smelled of earth and dust and time, like a place that remembered every voice that had ever echoed through its halls. As I walked from room to room, sunlight streaming in thick, golden bars, I realized this wasn't just a house. It was a blank canvas. It was a chance to rebuild my story, from the ground up, with no one editing me out. I called my fiancé. He was worried I'd been dark for 2 days. I just said, "I'm in Italy. I'm at the villa we bookmarked. I'm not moving my wedding. I'm moving my venue." He was silent for a beat. I held my breath. Then he just said, "If this is what peace looks like for you, I'm in. Send me the airport. I'll book my flight." That was it. No questions. "No, are you sure?" Just, "I'm in." The next day, I didn't rest. I hired local craftsmen Signor Rossi knew. The sound of hammers and laughter started to fill the empty rooms, mixing with the hum of cicadas. I sat on the terrace with a notebook. I wasn't grieving. I was planning. I sketched it out. One long, single stone table. Under the canopy of grapevines. No head table, no seating hierarchy. Just one table. Then, I made new invitations. Not the embossed, gold-sealed kind. I bought simple, thick, cream envelopes. I went for a walk in the grove, and I pressed a single, perfect olive leaf inside each one. Handwritten, personal, sincere. The first went to Rachel. She called me the second she got it, her voice cracking. "Esther, what is this?" "It's my wedding," I said. "The real one." "We heard what happened," she said, her voice turning fierce. "Aunt Judy told everyone Chloe's wedding was the main event. We're done, Esther. We're done pretending. Send us the details. We'll be there." The next went to Grandma Helen. She messaged me 2 hours later. A simple text. "I've missed enough real love in my life. I'll be in Tuscany, my dear." One by one, the replies came in. My chosen family. My found family. Rachel started a new group chat. She called it the Real Family Table. Photos of passport confirmations and laughing emojis filled my phone. For the first time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt chosen. The morning of both weddings arrived under the same sun, 2 worlds unfolding miles apart. In Boston, the air was heavy with humidity and nerves. The hotel ballroom glimmered under massive crystal chandeliers, but there was an uneasiness that even the $10,000 floral arrangements couldn't hide. Half the chairs near the front, the ones reserved for close family, sat conspicuously empty. My mother, Judy, stood by the entrance in her lavender dress, her smile stretched painfully wide, pretending not to notice how many familiar faces were missing. Dad checked his watch, then his phone, then the door, then his watch again. "Maybe the flights got delayed," Mom whispered, her voice brittle. But no one was coming. Inside, Chloe adjusted her veil for the 5th time. Her bridesmaids hovered, whispering, "Where's Grandma Helen? Didn't she always sit in the first row?" Chloe's smile wavered. "She must be running late," she said, but her voice cracked. The photographer shifted awkwardly, trying to frame a shot. Maybe we move everyone forward? He suggested gently. To fill in the gaps? Sure, Chloe said, forcing a laugh, but her hand trembled as she clutched her bouquet. Meanwhile, across the ocean, that same sunlight poured over the rolling hills of Tuscany. It was golden, catching on the silver-green olive leaves. The villa glowed like a painting, stone walls wrapped in ancient vines, lanterns swaying in a soft breeze. The long table was set beneath the grape canopy, lined with candles, wildflowers, and simple clay plates handmade by local artisans. Rachel's children chased each other, laughing, between the trees. My fiancé, my soon-to-be husband, was strumming his guitar softly, testing the chords of a love song. And in the front row, holding a small olive branch she'd plucked that morning, sat Grandma Helen. A symbol of peace, she'd said, winking at me. I stood inside, looking out through the open doorway. My wedding gown wasn't grand or glittering. It was simple, soft silk that caught the afternoon light. Lucia, the local chef who had become a dear friend, pinned a final sprig of olive leaves into my hair. For good fortune, she whispered. And for truth. When I stepped outside, the breeze lifted the veil. The guests turned, all 30 of them, their faces glowing. Grandma rose first, her eyes bright. There she is, she said softly. And for the first time, I believed her. There was no orchestra, just the guitar, the rustle of vines, and the sound of people who had chosen to be there. When it was my turn to speak my vows, I didn't read from a paper. My voice was steady. To the ones who show up, I began, my eyes finding Rachel's, then Grandma's, then my husband's. This love is for you, for those who believed in me before I ever proved I was enough, for the ones who stayed when it wasn't convenient. Rachel wiped her eyes. Grandma nodded slowly, whispering, "That's my girl." Halfway through dinner, as the lanterns above flickered on and the sky turned a deep, bruised violet, Rachel showed me her phone. "They're talking about it already," she said, half laughing. Photos had begun circulating, the villa, the table, the candles glowing, a picture of Grandma, raising her olive branch, laughing with my husband. In Boston, Chloe was posing for her couple's portrait when one of the bridesmaids gasped, scrolling through her phone. "Wait. Isn't that your family?" "What?" Chloe frowned, snatching the phone. On the screen was a photo of me, my husband, and Grandma, surrounded by our found family, all of us smiling under the Tuscan sky. Chloe froze. The murmur started. "Isn't that Aunt Marianne and Uncle Ray? I thought they were supposed to be here." Mom leaned over Dad's shoulder, her eyes narrowing at the tiny screen. "What is this?" she whispered, horrified. Dad's face drained of all color. "It's Esther's wedding." Chloe's breath hitched. They went to hers?" Mom didn't answer. The silence stretched, louder than any music. When the officiant later toasted to family unity, no one raised a glass. Back in Tuscany, Grandma Helen leaned across the table and took my hand. Her hand was warm, her grip surprisingly strong. "I've waited a long time to see this, Esther," she said, her voice full. This is what family was supposed to look like." The next morning, I was sipping coffee under the same olive tree where I'd said my vows. The air was quiet. My phone, which I'd ignored all night, was full. Missed calls, angry texts, and one voicemail, from Mom. I hit play. Her voice was trembling, not with sadness, but with rage. "Esther, how could you do this to us? Do you have any idea how embarrassed we were? Everyone was talking about it. Everyone. You made us look like fools." I listened to it. Once. Then I hit delete. A week later, she called again. I answered. "Esther," she started, her voice defensive. "You made us look heartless." I took a slow breath, watching the sunlight. "I didn't make you look any way, Mom. I just stopped hiding the truth for you." Before she could reply, another voice came through the line, faint but firm. "Judy, that's enough." It was Grandma. She must have been there, on speakerphone. "You spent 30 years, Grandma's voice said, clear and cold as water, asking this girl to shrink herself for your comfort. You asked her to be reasonable, to be flexible, to be strong. You trimmed her out of your pictures. Now, she finally stood tall, And you're calling it cruelty? No, my dear, that's not cruelty, that's freedom. Mom said nothing. The call ended. I stood there, under the olive trees, and I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since I was 16. You don't need to fight for a seat at someone else's table. Sometimes, you just have to have the courage to build your own, and trust that the right people will find their way to it. If this story hit home for you, share your thoughts in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. And remember, sometimes the quietest answer is the most powerful. Hit subscribe for more stories like this.